Now, to turn to the Baltic Sea, there's one key example of nutrient control. It's the Stockholm Archipelago, where phosphorus inputs, not nitrogen inputs, were decreased. It was rather by accident because they were decreased to decrease the phosphorus inputs to Lake Mälaren. And of course, Lake Mälaren is well known to have recovered, but there was less phosphorus running out the outflows of Lake Mälaren into the archipelago and elsewhere in the Baltic. And as a result, it had the same effect on the Baltic. The paper is rather well known. It's one by Brattberg in 1986. There was about a 70% reduction in phosphorus loading from these internal sources, and algae went down by about the same amount. In addition to that, the proportion of nitrogen-fixing bluegreenes decreased, just as they did in Lake 227. So, I really can't say what would happen in a full-strength marine system, but certainly in a brackish system like the Stockholm Archipelago, which ranges up to 6 PSU, the reaction is the same as it is in freshwater lakes. There are some who discount Lake 227 as a lake that's in a bubble in the minds of one person, but the success stories around the world tell a different story. For example, Eugene Welsh did a long-term study of the recovery of Moses Lake in Washington, where both phosphorus and nitrogen were cut. He followed the lake for 16 years. There were signs every summer of nitrogen limitation, but the algae responded in proportion to the phosphorus reduction. And he ended up concluding in a 2009 paper in Lake and Reservoir Management that nitrogen removal was not necessary, that the whole recovery was driven by phosphorus. And again, his results show clearly that these small-scale indicators of nitrogen limitation are spurious. They really are irrelevant to what the whole ecosystem is doing. They simply don't take the long-term processes like species successions and slow changes in the biogeochemical cycles and pool sizes of ecosystems into account.
Great, thank you so much. Wow, it's like Paul also wrote that the runoff of nitrogen has been reduced in Denmark by 50% over the last 20 years, but they haven't seen an increase in oxygen in the waters. So what's your comment to that?
I think he's seeing exactly what I would predict. I'll bet there's been no reduction in algal blooms, so the amount of sedimenting organic matter to consume oxygen is the same as it ever was. We would say, we see similar results in the lakes that we have fertilized.
So how would you characterize the policies that the Danish and Swedish and the Baltic Sea governments have been pursuing over the last decades?
I would say that they have not been very careful.
Sorry, could you start again and say the policies?
Yes, sorry about that.
You're doing great.
I think the policies to control nitrogen are extravagant. As I mentioned earlier, if everyone pursues them, we'll spend a lot of money without ever knowing whether the same result could have been obtained by controlling phosphorus alone. My guess from the whole lake experiments that we've run and all of the results that I've reviewed, including looking intensively for case histories of recovery, that removing phosphorus alone would do the same job and in the same time, and that adding the expensive controls on nitrogen to sewage treatment and agriculture really accomplish very little.
So these policies are basically not working.
I don't think the policies will work, and I don't think they can work. As long as we have an atmosphere that's 80% nitrogen and a few months of the year that are warm enough to promote nitrogen fixation, the algae will simply replace on a molecule for molecule basis the nitrogen that we've removed from effluent.